Hello, this is the Wellbeing Centre and Tweeny Pottery again, and this video is going to be about how we make the kit for the cup or the mug. This is the sort of mug that we're going to be making. You can see it can be painted on afterwards, and it's quite a nice little mug, and it's something you can do yourself and keep for yourself forever for drinking your tea or coffee. So in the kit, well, first of all I should say, before you start working, take some newsprint. This is actually white paper because it's easier for you to see on the video, but just take some newsprint and put on the work surface because it's for the clay not to stick to. The clay does tend to stick to normal work surfaces and plastic and steel. So here's the kit in a plastic bag. The plastic bag is for keeping things damp and moist so that the clay doesn't dry out. And in there we have some clay to use for the handle and for other things. We have some slip which we use for joining things together. It's a bit like glue for clay. And then in this plastic bag we have rolled out clay, pre-rolled out for you, for making the base, that piece, and for making the sides. So this has been cut out for you already and rolled for you already, just to make things a little bit easier. So there we have the starting point. And you may see that the slab of clay we're using for the sides is a bit rough on the surface, and this roughness is made of thousands of little cracks and imperfections. So we want to make this nice and smooth so that when it is bent, the little cracks don't crack all the way through and you end up with it breaking. So the best thing to use is a store card or an old credit card, and we just wipe the surface of the clay, the slab. You'll see it's picking up a little bit of clay on the surface, so it's actually scraping the surface of the clay away, and at the same time filling all the little cracks and imperfections. So you do that nicely on the first side, all the way around, everywhere. And if you do see any little holes or defects, just take a little bit of clay from the card and push it into the imperfection or the hole, and it fills it up. So that the little hole is gone. And we've done that. Carefully fold it over, turn it over onto the other side, and do the same thing again. So the important thing with this slab is not to bend it too much. You must treat it carefully and bend it gently to avoid it from cracking. Cracking is the biggest problem. If the clay has been around for a long time and it looks a little bit too dry, then you could spray a little bit of water on. I'm filling in a little hole here. Spray a little bit of water on and let it stand for a little while so the water soaks in, but not too much, because then you're going to get a floppy side and it's going to be difficult to assemble the side then. Okay, so now we've got the smooth front and smooth back, or top and bottom, or inside and outside. And the next thing is all the edges. As we later on bend this into the shape of a cup, we also could get cracks from the edge. So take a sponge and some water. Take the sponge, squeeze it out, and then go all around the edge. The idea is just to get rid of all the little cracks that are possibly at the edge, all the little imperfections. And again, turn it over and around the edge. When you turn it over, just make sure you keep it flat, don't bend it. Alright, so there we have the side prepared. Now the next thing is we're going to turn this around to form the outside of the cup. And to join the surfaces together, to join this surface with the other side, the underside of this surface, we need to scratch or score the surfaces. And to do that, we take a sharp object and just make lots of lines. You can use a sharp point like this, or you could use knife with a serrated edge does the same thing. As long as you get a rough surface, so it looks a bit like a ploughed field ready for planting the potatoes. That's on the inside, the top. And it's going to join with the outside of this piece. So we gently turn this over. As I say, don't let it bend too much, because if you do, if you bend this too much, it will crack. So gently turn it over and then roughen this side. So what we want to do is just roughen a little bit more than the overlap. And the overlap needs to be about 1 centimeter. So about this, about that much. Now in the one bag we have what we call slip. This is basically clay mixed with water. So take one corner of the bag and just snip off the corner. It's a bit like you're going to ice a cake. So you take this and gently squeeze it until you see the clay starting to come out, and just rub a little bit of clay onto the one surface that you've made rough, so it covers it nicely, completely covers it. Then gently turn this over again and put it on this surface. So we're rubbing it all over that surface. The idea now is this makes the surface soft and it fills in all the cracks and joins the two surfaces together to become one. So now I'm going to take this, I'll hold it this way so you can see. Now gently turn it, gently, slowly. As you turn it, put it down on its bottom, which is the smaller side. And then keep the shape as round as possible. Don't squash it. If you squash it here, it's going to crack here. So just gently turn it around so it looks like a cup or mug. And then this area there, that overlaps at the top and at the bottom, should be approximately 1 centimeter. Once you've done that, then hold the cup on the outside and push. You can see the slip is squeezing out. I'll turn that around. You see you've got the edge now that's created on the one side. The slip is squeezing out. If the slip is not squeezing out enough, then just try and squeeze it a little bit more until you find all the slip is squeezing out nicely over the whole surface. You can see it squeezing out over the edge, and I'm going to just rub it in to make it smooth. And the same on the inside. Good, so that's joined now. And we could then just take the sponge and just wipe the excess slip off. And the same on the inside. Okay, so we're getting something that's beginning to look like a cup already, or a mug. Now, this is the base, which I showed you earlier. Make this slightly bigger, so that it's definitely not going to be too small. It's definitely too big, because we want this to be slightly bigger than the base. So again, we're doing the same thing on the top surface, the inside of the mug. Let's just roughen this up. We don't need to worry about the bottom, because the bottom we can finish later. And let's just give that a good wipe as well with the sponge. It also softens it a little bit on the surface. Then we take the mug, put it on the mug side, put it on the square, so it's somewhere in the middle, and move it around a bit until it looks like it's nice and round in the center. So you can see the center there is looking quite round. You can catch the light. And we want to cut this slightly bigger than the side, just so that we can then scrape the side onto the bottom to make it strong. I've got a spike here. It's an easy thing to cut the clay with. A spike, and I'm making it just a couple of millimeters bigger than the side of the cup, all the way around. If you haven't got a spike, you can also use a little knife. Here's a plastic knife. It does the same thing. As I'm showing you this, I realize that you can't easily turn it. So that's the reason why you need to put put this onto something we can turn. If you've got a cake stand, something like this, it's perfect. Oh, this will be used for pottery. But if you don't have either of those, then it's perfectly fine just to take the tile. There's a normal wall tile, ceramic tile. And because the clay sticks to this, we don't want to make a cup or mug and find it doesn't come off. So we put some newspaper on there. That stops it from sticking. So we put the cup on there. I keep calling the cup a mug, but I guess it's the same sort of thing. Now we can turn it around, work on it. We don't need to lift it up and put it down, because each time you lift it up and put it down, you're possibly going to squash it. Clay doesn't like to be bent or squashed because it may crack. If it does crack, you rub the crack out. So if, for instance, it cracks through here, and you think, oh, there's a crack, we rub the crack out, like this. If necessary, use the sponge a bit, and just rub the crack away. Hold it firm. Whatever you do, hold the cup on the inside, support it. Or the other way around, hold the outside and support it. So don't let it bend, make sure it stays solid. So let's carry on with the cutting. A couple of millimeters bigger than the cup itself, all the way around. Here we have the base, slightly bigger than the cup. Okay. So now we've got the base on the bottom of the mug, but we want to have access to it so we can join it nicely. So let's turn the whole thing upside down on the same piece of paper. There we have it. Now what we need to do is take this off again, now that we've got it to size, and you can actually see the mark where it joins there, if you look carefully. And we need to do the same as we did for the side. So we score this, make it rough. We call this scoring and slipping. Put the scoring, or do the scoring, and we put the slip, clay slip. It's called slip because it's slippery, I guess. So that's that side. And then it doesn't matter if you go further out, rather score a bit more than you need to. I'm going to use this now because it's a bit deeper. I prefer to use something a bit deeper like that, so it makes it stronger. Because the two sides need to lock into each other. All around. There we go. And do the same. I've already done this with a knife, but I'll just make sure it's got some deeper scratches as well, just so it can lock together nicely. Then we take the slip again, and we gently squeeze it all the way around. Don't be frightened. Put a little bit more than you need on, so you can be sure that it squeezes out. You don't want any dry spots. So put plenty on, all around, and the same on the base, all around. There we go. And then we put the base back on the side, make sure it's fairly centered, same overlap all around, and then we're going to push it down. Push down, obviously not too hard, otherwise you'll squash the whole mug into pieces. Just firmly squash it down, firmly down, like that. And then you'll be able to see that the slip is squeezing out around the outside. Now, the next thing is to take the sponge, just wet the all around the outside a little bit, just to make it a bit softer, and then just rub with your finger or thumb. Hold your finger on top to support the top, well actually it's the bottom, and then with your other finger rub that down. So you're rubbing the base into the side. Just gently, gently. Rather do it slowly than quickly, little by little. Take your time. Because it's easy to fix little imperfections, but if you stick your finger through the whole cup, then it's harder to fix the whole. So just gently rub that down all the way. This is a little bit hard, this one, so it would be good if you could apply the sponge and leave it for 5 or 10 minutes, and then it'll get a bit softer. It'll be easier to rub down. So once you've gone all the way around, then we can lift it up. And you can see on the inside how the slip was squeezed out of the little gaps. Hold it in your hand. Be careful not to squeeze it or squash it. Keep the round shape. And then with your hand supporting on the inside, so my finger is on the inside, then we can just make sure it's nice and smooth on the outside. Little by little, take your time, just gently rub. The idea is to get a nice strong joint between the base and the side. And you can spend as long as you want to, making sure it's nice and smooth. So once you get that smooth finish you want, you can just use a sponge just to smooth it off. So you get the top and the bottom all becoming one part. And this join that you see, which is the join between the two parts of the side, I like to keep this because to me that join is something that shows this is a cup that's handmade. It's not coming from a shop in China. It's something you made with your own hands, and that join shows that it's handmade. If you don't like that, then you could just squash this down in the same way you did the bottom. And I like to keep that opposite the handle, so you can see. Here's another one. I've got the handle on the one side and the join on the other side, so it emphasizes that you can see it. If you want to, you could put the handle on this side, so the handle becomes part of the join. But actually you can do whatever you want to. It's your mug, and you can change the design to make it suit you. So now we're finished with the outside of the mug. It's looking quite nice and smooth, not too bad at all. The join. And the next thing is to look at the top of the mug. And the inside. The inside you can see where the slip has squeezed out at the bottom. So we need to smooth that out and make sure the top, the sides and the base join together nicely. So to do that, if you are able to get hold of what they call a tongue depressor at the doctor's, or if you haven't got that, maybe a lollipop stick, or if you do happen to have a wooden tool of some sort, here's one we use for pottery. What we need to do, I'm going to use the tongue depressor now because it's easy to see. We take this and we smooth the bottom in between the base and the side. Go all around and smooth it out until it's nice and smooth. So we don't want any holes or cracks. It must be nice, firstly to look nice and to make sure it's strong, but also when we drink from this cup we don't want any lumps and bumps in the bottom, because when it's washed you want to make sure it's hygienic and clean and smooth. So we clean all that, make it smooth, and also the joint between the sides, make sure that's smooth as well. No cracks, no gaps, all nice and smooth. And once you've done that, take the sponge, squeeze the sponge out in the water, and then smooth the bottom with the sponge. Either if you have small hands, they can fit inside, or long fingers. If you can't do either, maybe somebody else can help you. Or as a last resort, you can put a sponge on a bit of a stick. So I'm just getting in the bottom. I can just about manage to do it with my hand inside. And smoothing out the bottom. So that's quite smooth now. You can see inside. Before we finish the inside, just take a second look and make sure if there are any imperfections or lumps or something, just gently touch them up. Okay. So the next thing is the top. The top is flat as we rolled the clay out. So we want to make the top nice and smooth. So again, take the sponge, squeeze the sponge out and just flow around the top to make this nice and smooth, because remember, this is the part of the cup that you're going to be drinking from. So you want this nice and smooth so it's pleasant to drink from. So we'll wipe that all around nice and smoothly. And there we have it. So basically the mug itself is finished. I keep seeing little bits and pieces, so take your time and make sure everything is nice as you want it. And the next thing is the handle. So take about half of the clay from the clay that came in the plastic bag with the kit and roll it into a bit of a sausage, and then take that sausage and roll it more and more. As it gets longer, you can use both hands. Just put your fingers out like this so that it stretches outwards a little bit, gets longer. If you find like this now is going up, down because it's not quite round, then find the high spot and then rock it on the high spot, squash it down a bit to make it round. Then you can roll it, carry on rolling again. So roll it and roll it. If you do see some cracks appearing, just rub it with a damp sponge for the cracks to go and the surface to soften a bit. If the surface is soft, then it's less likely to crack. But don't soften it so much that the clay sticks to the paper. Otherwise you're going to have a mess. So again, just carry on rolling. So it's nice and round. If you see one part's thick and one part's thin, roll the thick part a bit harder. And there we have a nice, this is actually longer than we need for the handle. So that's definitely fine for the handle. Now you can decide if you want the handle to be round, in which case you can just leave it as it is. But you don't want it to be too thick. It shouldn't be too much thicker than the wall of the cup. So that thickness of the cup, it can be thicker than that, but not too much thicker than perhaps the joint there. Because if it's too thick and too thin, you can have problems. Try and keep it the same thickness. Now, I'm going to make this handle a little bit flat. So I'll take that side, roll it over that side. So it's becoming a little bit flat. And by putting a bit of water, just put some water on your fingers, and you can, without getting it too wet, you can make a bit of a shape on there or just flatten it. So you've got a nice looking handle. There are other ways of making a handle. One of the methods is to put the clay in some water and what they call pulling. So you pull like this on a big lump of clay. But that's quite difficult, so I'm not going to show that now. And the other method would be to roll out a big slab like the side of the mug and cut a handle. But for today, I think the best way to do your first one is to roll it. And it's actually quite a nice, you can see it's quite a nice handle. So the next thing is to decide what sort of handle shape we want. It can be a handle that looks a bit like an ear, like this. So imagine the cup is on this side. And the other possibility is to do it like that, so the cup is here. So you can decide which way you want to do the handle depending upon what sort of shape that you like. In this case today I'm going to do this normal, that sort of ear shape, and that's about the right size, so I cut it off there, and there we have the handle. Now at the moment this handle is a bit soft, so what I'm going to do is leave it for a little while so it can dry and be a bit more of the same hardness as the mug. So I'm going to put this mug back in a plastic bag and leave this handle out for maybe 2 hours or so to let it dry a little bit so it becomes a bit harder and easier to work with. So 2 hours has gone by. I've taken the mug back out of the plastic bag, and here's the handle, a little bit drier. It depends on the temperature and humidity in the daytime, but just wait till it's a little bit firmer to be able to stand up. Otherwise, if it's too soft, can flop down. But you don't want it too dry that it cracks. So if it is a little bit dry, just take the soft sponge, the damp sponge, and wipe the surface to avoid any cracks when it bends. So the next thing, we're going to put the handle opposite the join in the cup over here. So I'm going to just present the handle to the cup. Hello cup handle, hello handle cup. And I've made this a little bit too long, so I can cut the bottom off slightly. Or if you wanted to, you can make a feature out of this by rolling this bottom piece up. But today I'm going to just cut it off. Keep it simple. And that just goes to show you, if you do bend it too much, you can get these cracks. So before those cracks even start, make sure that you wipe with the sponge and rub all the cracks away. That's a piece of waste anyway. The handle itself seems to be fine. I just bent it a bit too much, I think, when I was showing you the possible feature. So now we put the handle where we want it, as I did a moment ago. And the handle actually makes the cup, it gives it character. So you need to decide how you want the shape to be. But I know it needs to be in that position, so I'm going to take a marker and just mark where the handle goes all around, because the same as with the sides, we need to score and slip again. Carefully keep the handle in the same shape. And then with the mug, let's put that paper down. There's the position that we want to put the handle in. So we want to score that, make it nice and rough, and the same here. Score, make it rough, so that the handle can bond and bind with the mug. And then the same thing for the handle. Here's the handle. So the bits that join onto the mug, we want to again score. And that piece, score, make it nice and rough, and then we use the slip, same as before. Squeeze it out, put some on the handle there, on the handle there, and the same thing for the mug. Always make sure when you pick it up, hold it gently, don't squash it. Slip there, plenty of slip there, and I'm going to put the handle, put the mug down, and I'm going to put the handle on for its final fitting. Top position, gently put pressure on the inside and the outside, inside and outside, squeeze it until all the slip is squeezing out. Don't squeeze it too much. Don't flatten the handle too much, but do at least let it squash a little bit so all the slip has come out and it's squashed in nicely, a nice joint. And then the same for the bottom. That's where I want it to go. I can see there's some little cracks forming here, so we'll deal with those in a moment. But then a hand on the inside and squash. I hope you can see that. Squash the handle on the outside, pushing against your finger on the inside. And you can see the slip is squeezing out. Make sure it lines up straight. It's not at an angle, but pretty much straight, vertical. And then we've got the handle on the cup. I'm not too happy with the shape at the moment. It's a bit high. But the first thing I want to do, because this handle's a little bit dry, I'm going to take the sponge again, wet the sponge, and on the outside here I see there's little cracks, which I don't want, because the little cracks become big cracks. And just smooth that off a little bit. Make sure there's no cracks anywhere. And then we can wipe off all the excess slip. All the excess slip, we just take a finger and wipe it off. The inside there, all around, make sure there's no gaps, but also just squeeze off the excess. Now, I said I wasn't too happy with the shape, so let's see if we can change the shape slightly. To me, it's coming up a little bit high. I want it to come down a bit, but if I push it, it might crack. So I'm going to just use the sponge again on the top. Make sure it's nice and soft on top. And then we'll just gently squeeze it. Don't pull it, but to squeeze it, gently squeeze it into the shape that you want. And at the bottom I think I want it out a bit more. There. It's the handle that makes the cup, it gives it character. So spend some time and make sure you're happy with it. A bit of slip on the inside there, so I'll wipe the slip off with a sponge. And tidy up with a sponge. And if you're not happy with any bits and pieces, now's the time just to tidy up. So on the inside there it's a bit skew, so I'm just going to take that piece off. There. And then again, wet the sponge. Just finish it off nicely. There we have it. So there's the cup, there's the handle. You can spend a little bit of time just making sure there's no gaps, especially at the top here where it's stretching. Use something just to push that in, just to make sure there's no cracks there. Compress the clay in. I'm quite happy with that. And if you do find that the handle's a little bit soft and it's drooping a bit, you just screw up some newspaper and push it under the handle or wherever you need to, just to support it and let it dry. So now it can get a bit harder and dry off. If you want to attach a piece of clay to the outside, then use the extra bit of clay that you've got in your packet, and you can roll it out with a rolling pin, turn it over. Again, if it's a bit got some cracks in it, just use the card to make it smooth. There. And you can shape. I'm not very good at drawing hearts, but let's try one. Hope that's okay. So we've got a heart, it's a bit thick. To go on the side of the cup. So again, as with anything else with the clay, we need to join it, and we need to slip and score again. So we take the back of the shape that you put on, and all over the back we score. We don't want any bits missed here, because you don't want to get air bubbles or defects in that section. Now you can put it on this side of the cup so you can see it when you drink, or you can put it on the other side so other people can see it. So it depends what you feel like. I think I'm going to put it on the other side. So let's put the heart on the side of the cup. There. And I'm going to just make a mark more or less where the heart goes. Which was there somewhere. And I'm going to score, as before, score this as well. Make sure it's nice and rough. And then, as before, we put the slip on. So we squeeze some slip on the cup. If I can find the hole, there we go. Put plenty on. All over the section. It's slightly bigger than where the heart actually goes, if possible. And the same on the back of the heart. All over. Ooh, we've got lots on there. And then I'm trying to do this so you can see with the camera. Let's hold it this way. Put the heart on the cup. So I've got my hand on the inside supporting it, and I'm pushing down on the outside. Gently squeeze it on so that the slip comes out and the heart becomes part of the cup. So squeeze all the slip out. You can see the slip coming out all the way around. So we don't want any gaps. We want the slip to squeeze out as much as possible. Squeeze out. Okay. And then we take the sponge again, and we just wipe off the excess slip. And if you like, my heart is not looking so good, there's still time to fix it. You can make that shape better. Take your time and make it as you want it. There we have the heart. Now when you paint this, you could perhaps paint the heart red. Oh, how about that? I think that looks quite nice. Oh, I like this mug. I think I might keep it for myself. Or keep it for my granddaughter maybe. So this mug's basically finished now. I'm going to show you in a moment how you can use a bit of what we call underglaze to colour it, and then it's left to dry. But before it dries completely and becomes like this is a clay that's dried completely. You can see it's very, very brittle, breaks very easily. So what we would like you to do is let this dry for a couple of hours, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours maybe, or even overnight, so it's not completely dry, but it's stiff and keeps its shape. And then you can pack it into a box with paper shreddings or some soft material in a box to keep it safe, and send it back, give it back to us at a collection point, or bring it directly back to us. And then we leave it to dry completely, so that it's completely dry like this, but obviously I'm not going to break it. And then we glaze it, giving this shiny finish. And the colours, this red paint or red underglaze that you've got may look a bit dull. It's actually called really red, and you can see it comes out really red. So the colour you put on is not actually what you get. It does change slightly. But the glazes are basically glass, and they'll last forever. And the glaze that goes everywhere, we call it a transparent glaze, seals the cup so it becomes non-porous and the water can't seep out. And it's cleanable. You can even put it in the dishwasher. I'm going to just show you quickly. Let's do the heart. You can paint directly onto the wet clay. Let me just paint it on. I'd rather do a few thin coats than one thick coat, just so that you don't see the lines as much. So put on one coat now, and then if you want to carefully go around the edge, I'm not going to do this now because it takes time. And if you do go too far, all you need to do is just scrape off the extra where it's gone too far, because the clay is still soft. So there we have the mug ready for finishing, or it's finished. Just remember, this is quite a big heart we've painted here, but the paint that you've got, which is a small quantity, is really just for doing special details, to write a name or paint something. But the rest of the cup, if it's left the natural colour, will come out white. So you're going to have a white cup with the colours on that you paint on. And before you finish, just make sure that the top is round. And we're all done.